Hello, hello, from the furthest shore. Let us chat about an autobiography by Anthony Trollope. Published posthumously in 1883. Trollope wrote this in, I think, 1876, 77, and then, put it aside to be published by his son on the event of his death. And he actually gave him permission to decide whether that would be the case, but that, it would bring some money in, which is definitely the concern with money is definitely a big theme in Trollope. I think someone, can't remember who, said that of English novelists, Trollope was the best on money and the effects that this had on people's lives, as you can tell by all the fighting over of wills and estates and various other things that he centers a lot of the plots of his books around, or getting ahead, or the settling of marriage agreements and things like that. This goes from his birth until, about 1876, where he's like, oh, I'm going to give up hunting. I'm getting older. And his son, helpfully at the beginning of this, shows about another 12 or 13 novels that he then went on to publish. He didn't say he was going to stop writing. He was just going to stop. He definitely felt like physically, he just couldn't do the hunting anymore. He was a big hunting enthusiast. Now that said, an autobiography is very much a writer's autobiography. It's about his writing. I'd almost be tempted, if they weren't such different writers, to say this is like the Stephen King on writing of its time, because once he gets through his miserable childhood, his financial failure of a father, his dynamic, vivacious author mother who supported the family after the father's finances just went to pot, wrote she started it like in her 50s and wrote like, I think it's 40 books, 40 works before she died. We get a lot of this is structured around his novels and him talking about kind of whether it's the inspiration or generally, the process of writing the books. His many novels. Anthony Trollope was an extremely prolific author, while at the same time, until into his late 50s, he was an employee of a civil servant for the British Post Office. He was also writing at the same time, something that kind of seems to have been one of the things that soured his relationship with his bosses at the post office, or particular bosses who didn't believe that a civil servant should have a life of their own, much less opinions, much less be writing sometimes controversial novels about society, which Anthony Trollope did not agree with, and thus there was a lot of friction there. But so he goes through, and he very much notes of, strangely enough, kind of coinciding with a little bit of a debate we've had on BookTube recently, which was that someone put that the only objective criterion for judging the success of a book is its popularity, i.e., its financial success, how many people bought the book. And a lot of people definitely came very hard down on the poor fellow who came up with that. I'll link it down below because I can't remember who that was. But I do actually think that Anthony Trollope would probably side with this fellow, because he's very much of, a book's success or failure is how many people bought my book. It's like, oh, that didn't work with the public, though he does reserve that writerly thing of like, what? But I think actually that was actually a good story. But I have to bow to the fact that it didn't sell that well. And indeed, at the very end of this book, which I don't think is too much spoilers, is he has a very particular. He has a chart of all the books that he has written, all the novels that he's written, with the date of publication and the total sums received, how much he was paid for each book. And in a society where, talking about how much you made was like, ah. This was not quite a thing. And I mean, the thing about Anthony Trollope is he does not put himself forward as the tortured genius sitting in his garret, only doing this for art's sake. No, he says, like, I'm a shoemaker. I make books. I I get my books on time. I write my books to length. I don't write it any shorter or any longer. I write it to the length. I get it in on time. Has a whole thing here with Victor Hugo being late with his book, pushing back Trollope's book, and Trollope is not happy about that. But he probably destroyed his literary reputation after his death, which was probably also on the wane because I mean he had outlived his popularity and like him being in, and there was very much a different aesthetic coming in, and he was seen as very old fashioned and outdated. But such was the strength of his writing, the genius of his making engaging characters, that all of whom he talks about in these books. That he survived that fallow period and has risen again in popularity over the years and has been reconsidered. But at the time, he put himself forward in an almost kind of working class manner of like, yeah, I'm like a shoemaker. I make books. I make things, and I expect to get paid for them. If a shoemaker didn't get paid, he wouldn't make his shoes. A shoemaker doesn't also go, oh, I just don't feel the inspiration today. It's like, no, this is my job. I do my job, which is probably a lot more in tune with today's standards. He is somebody who kept count of his he kept his word count for the days, and if he fell behind, it felt like, oh, that's like a blister in my eye. And he would work to get it up, and his work was prodigious. He crammed in his writing whenever he could, getting up early, or as he was taking the train more and more, he made himself a little tablet and would write his novels, everything longhand, and then passed over to I believe his wife. His family does not get very much mentioned in here. This is very much a writerly focused book, but as such, you get to hear him talk about stuff. There's a chapter 12, which I might just kind of put out as a separate thing of me talking about that, is on novels and the art of writing them, going through, saying like, at the beginning, it's like not too many people. He comes from a generation where novels were really looked down upon, but now everybody reads them. He said, like, he definitely has the kind of a thing of like, there's a moral purpose behind these books. I'm trying to teach morality, but not in a way of like I'm preaching a sermon to you, but depicting people that you would read this and go, oh, not like this, not me. I don't want to be like this. And he does actually do that in his novels. The good people you really like, and you really want to be a part of. Most of the bad people, you're like, oh, I don't know. Lizzie Eustace, kind of femme fatale, though. Kind of a little bit of attraction there. I have to say, Mr. Trollope. The ideas of realism and sensationalism, and he has advice to young authors coming up. But it's like, the main thing being, don't be tedious, but also stuff on plot and character and style and language. I mean, he was very much of the school of, your language should be harmonious, it should be rhythmic, it shouldn't be a barrier to your reader. It should be rough, it shouldn't be difficult. He is definitely of that school. Because he was a commercial writer in a lot of ways. I think he was writing stuff that was going to last. But he was also, I'm wanting to reach as many people as possible and make this as pleasurable an experience as possible, which is probably something that, there's a lot of modern literature I really enjoy, but there's something to be said about being told a really good story in a really inviting way that is engaging, that is still engaging today and is attractive today. And I think it's one of the reasons why there's a lot of Victorian authors that are still beloved today, because they wanted to tell engaging stories to you with vivid characters and ripping plots, ripping yarns, stuff like that. So yeah. This is, for Trollope. I think it's like about 300, it was 300 pages. It's a tiny little thing. It's very focused, which I really appreciate. The brevity thing again. So yeah, that is an autobiography by Anthony Trollope. I've actually just picked up Victoria Glendinnings's Trollope, her biography of Trollope, and this is filling in a lot of stuff that Trollope wasn't interested in sharing in this, but is also it's funny because an autobiography is getting quoted quite a bit in here, and it's like, oh, it's like a visit from that friend. I'm really glad that I read this first, and while I'm still like I'm really enjoying this, it's like it's worth it to kind of go back and hear the guy himself talk, because he tells his story in a very engaging, kind of peppy kind of way that isn't going to bore you, or at least didn't bore me as somebody who's read enough of Trollope to kind of get the plot. I've read like maybe 13 novels by him, 13, 14 novels by him, and then a couple of other things. So I could follow along. There's enough in there, enough in here that I could follow along. So probably, obviously, if you're reading an autobiography by Anthony Trollope, you're probably already a Trollope fan. Definitely as engaging. Still has that Trollope voice that you just is the joy of all Trollope writing. That he's got that voice that you just want to come back to and have him as company. He's such good company. All right, I will leave it there. More videos later.